I'm sure you've probably seen it, maybe the Dr. Dolittle movies, and there's other movies where animals speak. Is it like, is it in that vein? Like, are you having a conversation? Is it literally in that way in which you can full on, have conversation with them and understand how they're feeling in that moment, what they're looking for, what they need, that type of thing?
Sometimes. So again, the same thing with the different animals being different. So some animals will dialogue just as you and I are right now, where I ask you a question or you ask me a question, you answer it, we go back and forth. That's absolutely possible. So I experience that. But other times they have their own ways and they will surprise me. You know what I mean? Like it's not about me asking a question. They have something else they want to talk about, or they have some other thing that they think is important. You know what I mean? So it's not if one does not have an agenda, it is very likely to have a conversation. If you have an agenda, the chances go down. I mean,
Mm.
it isn't to say that people will say, ask my horse what he likes, if he likes this treat or whatever. I was having this one conversation with this horse, literally conversation, like we're talking. And he was an amazing horse. He was a 40-year-old horse, which is rare.
Mm.
The people are take excellent care, all holistic care, the best food, all this other stuff. So he was showing me the spiritual he was showing me how he works energetically, how he works like literally with the magnetic lines of the earth, and that sometimes when he stands this way or he stands that way, it's not arbitrary. He's doing work. And sometimes he'll position himself like at a 90-degree angle with another horse or right next to another horse. And again, that this was purposeful. And he was showing me, he literally took me to like the max that I could comprehend, in terms of what he was showing me about how he worked with energy and movement and position relative to the earth. I mean, it was so sophisticated. So he took me on this, like, absolutely expanded my concepts beyond to the limit of what I could experience. And at the end, I always, clients, I will say, "Is there anything you would like your humans to know?" And he says, "I would like more treats." You know what I mean? So he went from like this, like, Zen Buddhist experience to, I want more treats. And I said, and they said, oh, we give him treats, but he wanted more. And so it's like, that was such an interesting experience it was a teaching thing for me because it showed me, instead of thinking of a horse as being high or low in consciousness, that they have levels of consciousness they can be on at different times.
Mm.
And it's the same. I've seen that with a lot of animals, that some animals will really give you these very profound spiritual rides, almost like they're teaching us. And other times it's like, I want more ice cream,
Just
you
like
know?
people, for that
Yeah,
matter. People are the same way, right?
exactly. So that was very helpful to me to get off of this idea of thinking that some animals are very evolved and others are not so evolved. And, that kind of
Yep.
dichotomy, very human way of thinking. So it was quite a good lesson for me. So sometimes, like that horse whose name was Blue, it's not like he necessarily wants to answer questions per se, but he will only talk to me if I'm at the height of my capacity for peace and presence. Like if I'm a little distracted, he's not interested. He's not just, it's like I have to really tune up to talk to him. Other
Mm.
animals they'll just talk to you walking by on the street. You know what I mean? They'll just tell me, I don't like the way my owner's doing that. They'll tell me something, they just throw something out. So it's kind of like humans in that way,
Yeah.
and that it's unpredictable and it's unique.
Huh.
The way a cat talks is different from the way a dog talks,
Dog
different
talks.
from the way
Yeah.
a sheep talks.
Huh. I mean, what was it like? I mean, I know you told the story of your cat, but when you realized this, I mean, there had to be a part of you that was like, I'm losing my mind. Like, this is crazy. Like, something's wrong here, or whatever. There's got to be some explanation for this, I would imagine. Like, how did you come to grips with the idea of what it actually was?
Well, first it was slow,
Mhm.
so it wasn't like all at once. And I think that helped me take the time to get used to it. I never thought it was crazy, but what I do have and what I find when I help people learn this, the biggest obstacle is self-doubt, the
Mm.
belief that you can't do it, or that you're not really hearing, or that you're making it up. And so that takes time to really prove it to yourself by, working with owners who can say, yeah, that's so true, or, how would you know that, or, something that is really confirming, and you get a confirmation and a confirmation and a confirmation, you get a bunch of them, and then you go, okay, maybe this is true. So there are days that I doubt, you know somebody will ask me something and I can't hear it, or I can't connect with that animal. It isn't always 100%. Like anything else, that's, if you ask me to communicate with you, sometimes it'll go well, sometimes maybe we'll misunderstand each other. So it's an art more than a science.
Mm. Mm. And what about reactions from whatever it might be, friends, family? Was there, especially when you first started doing this? did people understand it? Did they get it? Were people put off by it? How did that play?
I'm surprised that we're even talking about it because I don't usually talk about it.
Huh, alright.
I mean, I sort of like you asked me, so I told you, but I don't talk about it unless I know that they're open,
Huh,
because I don't want to subject myself necessarily to people thinking I'm crazy, which is
yeah,
certainly possible.
yeah,
But the rewards of doing it are so great that it's like, well, let the doubters doubt. I'm just
right,
gonna, have this because it's such a rich world. I mean, sometimes the things that they share with us are so fun and so interesting how they perceive things, because they're perceiving things through their senses. We perceive things very much through our mind, through the thinking. So it's not to say that they don't think because they do. It's not that animals are always in present time because they're not. They can worry about the future or think about the past. So, that's an illusion that they're always in the present. They're not always, but they're
yeah,
mostly in the present, and they're able to get back to the present a lot more easier. So they can let go of something. So if you accidentally step on your dog's foot and you go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," the dog's over it in a second, right?
huh,
It's like, whereas with a person, you step on their foot, if not literally, but figuratively, it could take a while. Well, why did you do that? We have to discuss this. And what do you mean?
mhm,
And
yeah,
did you disrespect me? And don't you care about me? If you cared about me, you wouldn't step on my foot. Right.
yeah,
So that's what happens in the human world. And in the animal world is you stepped on my foot. You're nice now. You gave me a treat. We're fine.
we're good now.
We're
Ha,
back into the moment, you know what I mean? So that's their one of their gifts is because they have less and I don't want to say no because they think, but they have less of the thinking so they can be more in the moment.
it's more what they feel. It's more what they're
Yeah,
feeling in that
more in the
moment.
feeling,
Wow, wow,
like what's happening right now.
huh. All right, so maybe last question on this thread. I said we may get philosophical as you try and make sense of it at the grand scheme of things. We touched on it a little bit before with the spirituality point in religion, but how do you think about that? Do you think well, let me leave it open. Like, how do you make sense of it? Do you think anybody's capable of this? How do you think about the fact that you can communicate with animals in this way? Does it tell you anything about the universe, about the world, about why all of this is what it is?
Yeah. That's a whole lot of questions. So let me
Yeah, it
start with
is.
the first one. I think anybody with a sincere desire, a willingness to practice the discipline to do the work can learn it. Some people are going to be better than others. Some people just wake up doing it one day and it's like, I don't know why, they just all of a sudden they can communicate. So there's a whole range, but it isn't like something special. It isn't like Leonardo da Vinci can paint and, not everyone can paint like Leonardo, right? So the potential for anyone who truly desires it is there. And what it's taught me about the universe is that consciousness is real. In other words, that communication, intelligence, intention translates physical space. It translates time, meaning I can communicate with animals who've passed. I can communicate with animals who aren't in my presence. So it's taught me that consciousness is this vast, open, unexplored universe. Do you know what I mean? It's the final frontier is
Mhm.
consciousness. So that's true for humans and for animals. But with animals, it's pretty easy because they are in that zone. Like if you have I think you said you have a cat. You have a cat,
Two cats, a dog,
two
a
cats.
rabbit. Yeah,
So you know how the cat is just like looking at something that you can't see, and like
yeah,
they're like really attuned to something. Well, there's
yeah.
something they're seeing, right?